At that moment, the door opened, and Anna entered the room. "What is this? A letter?" "Yes, that is, no," I whispered, "just a piece of paper." Anna looked at me strangely and left. I grabbed the piece of paper and read. "The fish has gone. Put the nets in the blue lagoon. Ask the peaceful people." Apparently it was a copy of my father's telegram. But why was it sewn up?
"Where is this damn letter?"
Hanako flew into the room. I silently looked into his eyes. He squeezed my hand tightly. "I burned it," I said, and pointed to the ashes on the carpet. Hanako hit me in the face and left, slamming the door. My cheek was burning, anger gradually filled my whole body. "Well, never mind, I'll play a funny joke on you." I took out a sharp Japanese hairpin and hid it in the sleeve of my bathrobe. 2 girls came for me in the evening and took me with them. "We have important guests today," they said, "and you will have to work." Seeing the fear in my eyes, they laughed. "Don't be afraid, you will only serve at the table." With fear, but at the same time with great curiosity, I went with them to a part of the house where I had not been before. The girl opened the door. "Go there. They will tell you what to do." I entered and immediately found myself in a large hall. There were tables, wide low sofas, and in the middle, on a black marble pedestal, stood a sculpture of 2 naked women and a man. One woman was kneeling, the other was lying on her back under her and touching the first. The man was kneeling behind the one who was kneeling. There was so much dynamics and lively passion in this group. The faces of the participants were so expressive that I felt something like desire, some pleasant itching in the lower abdomen. Suddenly a sharp voice brought me out of my stupor.
"No more admiring, Señorina. Better help set the table."
I turned around. Behind me stood the owner of this establishment, a small, fat Japanese man.
"Hanako is very unhappy with you, Señorina. You could get into big trouble, not to mention the fact that you will have to serve our guests on an equal basis with other girls."
I decided not to tell anyone what was written in that letter. With such thoughts, I, along with the other maids, carried the dishes, served the food on the table, and put flowers in vases. And now everything was ready. Bright lights came on. Pleasant music poured from above. The door opened, and girls entered, dressed in luxurious dresses, high-heeled shoes, decorated with gold necklaces with pearls. With sparkling eyes and burning cheeks, they laughed merrily and talked to each other. Soon the guests entered, several very elegantly dressed men. They sat down on the couches and curiously began to look at the sculpture on the marble pedestal, laughing and exchanging ideas. One, the youngest of them, resolutely approached our mulatto and kissed her hand, from which I concluded that he had long been acquainted with Anna. I understood, an alliance was already established between them for this evening. Trying not to be noticed, I went to one of the corners. I thought, let them have their fun, and no one would pay attention to me and, probably, they would leave me alone this evening. It was dark here, probably that's how the guests liked it, who were already preparing to take their places with their girls in the most cozy corners. But I could see everything, and I watched what was happening. The girls, having met the men, began to entertain them with conversations. Some were already sitting at the tables. After a while, glasses clinked. It became loud and cheerful. The men took off their jackets and remained in white shirts. The girls lay down on the couches, showing off their beautiful legs. One of the guests pressed his lips to the knees of a charming Japanese woman. She, lying down on the pillows, burst into joyful laughter, raising her dress higher and higher. At the other end of the hall, 2 guests sat down next to a long-haired girl whom I hardly knew. She was from another group. Some of the girls had already taken off their dresses and were sitting in front of the men in only their underwear, and one even without underwear at all. No shyness, no embarrassment, just businesslike, from which it could be concluded that such free behavior was prescribed to them, and they were starting to get used to it. Emma, tall, blonde, with a thin waist, climbed onto the table and demonstrated a striptease, striking everyone with the flexibility of her body. The people gathered around the table encouraged her with shouts. There were also encouraging advice: more, faster. Everyone wanted to touch her wonderful body, to stroke the most beautiful places. They devoured her with their eyes. Gradually taking off her clothes, the girl began to dance such a crazy dance that the men screamed with delight, and she, inspired by herself, began to make completely indecent movements, exposing the most intimate parts of her body. Gradually her movements became smoother and slower, her eyes blurred, and she fell into the arms of one of the men. A tall, slender brunette carried her to a remote corner of the hall, put her on a low sofa. Standing on the sofa, Emma tried to help him by raising one leg, which the man picked up and placed comfortably on his shoulder. Hot kisses, the girl tries to raise one leg higher, then the other, both sway, their hands intertwined, eyes half closed, breathing ragged. Everything is fine, they breathe faster, but the man makes a careless jerk, and his stick slips out again. Meanwhile, everyone has already mixed in the hall. A holiday begins, which Nero himself could envy. Some couples lie down on the sofa, others fall on the floor, others settle on chairs. The less shy ones on the table, inventing strange poses. A stormy, rhythmic music pours from the radio, the light becomes brighter, everyone seems to be blinded, everyone is in wild ecstasy. You can hear exclamations, moans, pleas, men's words demanding more or wanting a different pose. Looking at this from my cozy corner, I felt that I was captivated by this spectacle, and my body was suddenly filled with a thirst for intimacy. Why not there? In what way am I worse than them? And wouldn't the same thing happen to me? A little further, on the next sofa, the German Emma was driving two hefty men crazy. And, as it seemed to me, the most amazing thing about this combination of the three was that Emma was the main one among them, that it was she who dominated them, forced them to obey her, controlled their movements and even their feelings. Suddenly the light went out, the music stopped. A minute later it became clear again, but the lighting already had a kind of pink tint. There was an oppressive silence. Everyone who was on the sofas, on the floor, on the chairs seemed to freeze in fear, waiting for something incredible. The door opened, and a silver chariot rolled into the hall, like those in which Roman emperors rode in ancient times. Only it was not harnessed to swift horses rushing forward, but to four girls with flowing hair. In the chariot, holding the reins in her hands, stood Anna, who portrayed Aphrodite. With a narrow strip of precious stones on her hips, she was dazzlingly beautiful. The girls quickly drove her through the hall, and she, raising her hand in greeting, smiled mysteriously. Everyone in the hall froze, amazed by the unprecedented spectacle. But I did not manage to see more. Behind me I suddenly heard the rustle of a curtain being pulled back, and I had barely managed to take my hand out from under my dressing gown when Hanako grabbed my arm. With my head lowered, I followed him. He did not seem to notice anything. We passed into another part of the house and entered the room where Ted and the fat European were sitting.
What's new?
Ted said, pouring me a glass of whiskey. Hiding my fear, I drank and said, I won't tell you anything.
Wow. Oh, the girl shows her teeth.
The fat man growled angrily.
But it's okay, we'll break them off.
Ted looked at me with curiosity and surprise.
You're barking in vain. You'll have to talk anyway. About what was written on that piece of paper. It's useless to keep quiet. And when you do, we'll let you go. You have a lot of money. It's kept at the Italian consul. Your guardians are looking for you all the time, and you can leave for Italy right away. By the way, your brother will be very glad to see you.
At the mention of my brother, thoughts whirled around in my head. I was 5 years old when we parted. Thoughts about my brother gave me strength, and I decided to stand my ground no matter what. I understood with my inner feeling that if I told the truth, they would kill me, that all their promises were lies. I can't tell you anything, I said. It was a prayer, written for me by my father so that I could learn it by heart as soon as possible.
Then why did he sew it into your dress?
The fat man shouted.
Calm down, boss.
Ted pushed the bottle towards him.
Damn whiskey. I want to know the meaning of the prayer or whatever else was in it. So what kind of prayer is that, dear? Maybe you can read it to us?
Ted asked. I kept quiet. My father didn't believe in God, and I didn't know any prayers.
Stop fooling around. With such a prayer you'll go straight to hell. Pray differently.
Clenching his fists menacingly, he approached me and shook me hard by the shoulder.
Hanako will make her pray.
The fat man said angrily. I screamed in pain, but the whiskey I had drunk gave me such courage and anger that I grabbed his face with my free hand, trying to scratch his eyes.
Bravo, babe.
Ted could not refrain from exclaiming and suddenly slapped me so hard that my eyes darkened. I came to my senses in my room and immediately wondered, what would happen next? Will it really continue like this? Anna quietly slipped through the door and began to look after me, change my bandage, and chatter. She was very complimentary about Ted, and I could tell from her words that he could help me. I listened carefully to Anna, hoping that she would say something else interesting. But I didn't learn anything significant.